Yeah, really excited about the class. Having been able to work with a lot of these players that we have had that are now committed and signed with us, seeing them live over the last couple years and just seeing how they've developed, seeing them at camps, having them on campus. I think it's been really smooth in the transition as far as us coming here and for one, not necessarily being a new staff, but being in a different location. So you can see a lot of these guys are more Midwest based, just from our prior relationship at our last stop. So we know exactly who they are, what their family makeup is, and what they're about as individuals, as competitors, as student athletes, and we're really excited to add the group that we did. So we signed 18 total players this morning, and these guys come from 11 different states, multiple different positions, and places that we felt like could make an impact here in the near future. So we're excited about this group, and we look forward to them getting on campus here at the end of May and June.
As a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. First question is from Jamie Vinnick from Coug Fan. Go ahead, Jamie.
Coach, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. First off, congratulations on the 18 signees.
Thank you.
Just kind of wondering if you could go down the list and just give a comment or two kind of on each guys and what Washington State fans should know about the 18 guys you signed today.
Yeah, I'll start at quarterback. Dalton Anderson, he's a guy that we've saw here late. When he opened his recruitment from Utah State, being a prior Utah State commit, and then the transition at Utah State happened there to where he ended up getting out of his scholarship tender and made himself available. When that happened, looking at that film afterwards, I was like, this kid's extremely impressive. And talking to some of the prior staff that is still on our staff now currently, just like, what did you know about him? And they knew about him and they were excited about him. I believe he was going to be potentially next up for them based off of their quarterback situation and how things panned out with the prior quarterback that left to go to Wake. Watching him, I felt like he was a no-brainer, really strong arm, mobile player that's local and that could be competitive right away. The other one is Owen Eshelman, a player that was committed to us, since the prior summer. And being able to go down in the spring, watch him live, watch his accuracy, and then get to know him over the course of 6 months. He's a phenomenal human being, just a great student athlete, 35 ACT, really a locked in individual with great leadership qualities to him, and has the intangibles to be a really, really special college football player. So we're excited about him. At running back, Trayvon Pankey, he's a player out of Kansas City, Missouri. That same thing. We've been recruiting him since last spring as well, watching his development from last spring into the summer, having him at our camp, seeing him at other camps, all padded. So to be able to watch his physicality and the style in which he runs the ball, very similar to Isaiah Davis, who we coached at South Dakota State, as far as kind of his makeup, a little bit bigger back, but very violent runner, can make people miss in a small space, can catch the ball out on the perimeter, and then also just be able to continuously break tackles play after play when he's given the opportunity to run the football. So we're excited about Trayvon. At wide receiver, Carter Paps, we were able to see him in the summer as well. And we originally had filled up at our prior spot, but when a spot opened up, he was the first wide receiver that we went back to because we were able to witness and watch him compete over the summer. Really a special talent for his size. He's probably a little under 6'2", so he's a longer 6'1", and he's put together. He's probably a little over 200 pounds. Really good with ball in hand, making people miss, the ability to break tackles. Reminded us very similar to the Yankee twins that were with us at South Dakota State that both got NFL opportunities after graduation. So we're excited about him and what he can do. Really great athlete, multi-sport player. Tight ends wise, Josiah Cornwell, he's a kid that we kind of have found out about here just with our desire to kind of want to grow in that area of utilizing the tight end position more, just the type of body that we look for. He's a little under 6'4". He's 247 pounds. A physical kid that has a defensive mentality playing the tight end position, but has the ability to run good routes. He sent us a ton of drill tape. We felt good about his athletic makeup and what he could become as we develop him here. So he's a junior college player, and didn't see a whole lot of catching and the ability to have the ball thrown to him a ton, but being able to see some drill work and watching him from ground level, great hands, good mover, athletic kid that's physical. And so we're excited to add him, and especially with the size and physicality we expect out of our tight end position. At O-line, Trevor Bindell, he is from Liberty High School in Liberty, Missouri. We had seen him at multiple camps over the summer. Big physical kid that moves well. He was at our summer camp. I don't think he maybe performed the way he would have liked, but he also had taken like 8 camps prior to us being able to work with him live. And I think that he's got a bright future ahead of him. Really good mover, explosive kid that's physical. He's from the same high school as Isaiah Hung, and Isaiah Hung is a true freshman early enrollee here. So kind of getting to know both of them over a period of time was good. And then obviously being able to connect with them and their parents on the official visit. This is exactly what Trevor had been looking for, had numerous opportunities elsewhere, especially early in his career, and just didn't feel like any of those places were the right fit for him. This is exactly what he was looking for, and was excited when we knocked on his door about this opportunity. Jordan Cunningham, he's from Phoenix, Arizona. He's actually a Canadian kid. And I've known about Jordan for a long time. I've actually recruited his brother years ago, Quaylen Cunningham, who was playing in the NFL for years. His dad was a former NFL player. He's got great lineage. He has blossomed over the last couple years. Came into, I believe, his junior year weighing about 200 pounds. And so in the last year, he's put on 85, 90 pounds and has really kind of started to blossom into his frame. Came on his visit, and seeing him in person. I mean, his future is really bright, and I just felt really convicted on what he's going to become as far as just talking to him. Extremely mature individual that's really competitive, and believe knows what he's capable of long term, but I know he knows that he needs to work at it, and it's not just going to happen. So I think he is going to need to develop, but I do think he will develop at a really quick rate, just as far as his arm length and his ability to redirect. He's an athletic body. He's just still growing into his body, but a really big, long kid. On his visit, we kind of laughed. He looked like he's college ready right now. Dylan Hildebrand, another Midwest O-lineman that we had known since last spring, and watching him develop, and we were able to work with him at our own camp. Was excited about how much he's improved, and then going back and watching his game tape, and we were excited to, realize that he was still open and willing to listen to us. He had several things going on. Big physical kid that has somewhat cut weight and has gotten more athletic since the last 6 months ago when we saw him live. And so just being able to get some of the footage and watching him in his games and how he's developed over the season, really physical kid, Muller type O-lineman, will have the opportunity to impact us at the guard position. The defensive line, Donovan Fitzmaurice, really, really explosive kid, got great lateral bend and quickness, extremely physical, may come in as pound for pound the strongest kid on the team. He's a weight room junkie, and he is really physical and violent. And we were able to see him multiple times and work with him and get to know him. And he has a great makeup of becoming a next, immediate impact player for us at the D-line position. Connor Sullivan, again, another kid that we had recruited for years got to know him and his mother over last spring, and then being able to really follow him on his camp circuit. He's a kid that ended up with quite a few things, and he's had Big Ten interests and a lot of schools that were, after he had priorly committed to us, started to get back in, and we're trying to, seek his interest in them. And he was committed to us. We had just been with him for a long time. It actually ended up tearing his ACL his senior year. And if it probably wasn't for that, he probably would have ended up with, Power 4 offers and the opportunity to play at those schools. So we're excited about what he could do. He's really long, he is physical, and he is tough. And excited to get him on campus and just watch him develop and move. And come fall camp, when he's 100%, I think we're going to be ecstatic about what he could do for us. Josh Weddle is going to play at the defensive end position to start. He's from Chaska, Minnesota. Washington State had previously offered him with the last staff, and he committed to us. Really an intelligent kid, 32 ACT, had Army, had Ohio, had the entire Missouri Valley. He was selected for the Minnesota High School Football All-Star Game. Just a really long kid that's going to develop and has great length. Right now, we're going to start him at defensive end and see what he can do, because he can bend really well and he is explosive, but he has the frame to potentially move inside and play D tackle if need be later on throughout his career. Linebacker-wise, Sullivan Schlimgen, he's from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Known about him for years. We've been watching him develop. Really explosive kid, 10'8", 100-meter kid, and he's 225 pounds right now. He's got good length. He is physical, and he's extremely smart. So his overall desire to be great excites us more than any other 40 time or measurable thing that you can measure, because I think that is the hardest thing to measure. But when you get to know people, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to come in and have a certain desire to compete right away and do everything that we ask him to do to have success. Aramis Wright, kind of a unique story on Aramis. We were on him. I loved his film early last spring, but I knew that he was going to eventually start to blow up with FBS offers. Ended up getting an Ole Miss offer, ended up getting a Michigan State offer, and we were able to get him on campus at South Dakota State in the summer, and just getting to know him and his mother and developing that relationship. Coach Banks did an unbelievable job just sticking with him through all the scholarship opportunities he was getting. And we developed the relationship, and he felt at home. And obviously when we made this transition, he was extremely excited to come with us. As far as, he might've been the first guy to reach out immediately when he heard the news, as he was coming to, Brookings, South Dakota, because of the staff and because of our relationship. So when we took this opportunity, he was all about coming with us. And so we were extremely excited about him and what he can do. He is a little taller than probably 6 foot, and he's about 200 pounds right now. So I know that's probably listed at 180 on your end, but really a violent kid. That's a great space player, plays running back, plays linebacker, dynamic player that I could see making an impact early in his career at linebacker. Defensive back wise, I feel really, really good about this group of freshmen, being able to witness all of these players live. Tyrone Cotton, I do foresee him being maybe the most ready early, just as far as his length and his speed and his ability to cover man to man. And he's an exceptional player. Got offered at Indiana, and things didn't work out for whatever reason on him tripping out there. And we had developed a relationship for over 6 months. And when we took this opportunity, he was excited to come as well. Really a really long levered kid. So the ability to high point of football, you're going to see him at kick returner and punt returner. He's got great speed, ability to separate, but also the ability to recover when he's covering people one-on-one really stood out. Brody Miller, safety. We're going to at least start at safety. You can see him on his high school film playing a little bit more corner. He's a really rangy kid, and he's really developed into his body somewhat late. Explosive, another kid that's running, he's probably going to run close to 10.7 this year in track. Explosive player that has huge like feet and features that he's going to blossom into his body. He's just doing it later than most high school players do. So great man-to-man player, and then he is physical and he is instinctual, and that's one thing that we look for on the back end is just great space players and having the ability to read and react very quickly. We feel confident in what Brody can do. He's also in the Minnesota All-Star game. Demarius Russell, is from Waseca, Minnesota, actually coached his brother Savion Williamson, and there was already a prior relationship there with him and his family. But Demarius is a special player. He plays everything for his team. He's a basketball player. Runs track. He's the best player, or the best athlete by far, probably in that area of Minnesota. He's just a dynamic player. He could play wide receiver if we needed him to. He's just kind of has a unique skill set, but he's also very savvy. We're going to start him at safety, and if need be, could play corner for us just with his foot speed. Dynamic player with the ball in his hands as well. Trillian Sorrell is a player that we were able to witness at University of Minnesota's camp, and watching him compete and just the spirit of who he was and his range and athleticism reminded me a lot of a player that we had that had the opportunity to get drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. And so watching him at that camp and watching him move and redirect and be able to cover people man to man, and then just the overall, his competitiveness is what attracted our staff to him. Just watching him constantly compete inside of drills was really, really impressive. And then getting to know him and what he's about, I'm excited for his development. And then special teams wise, Adlai Lounsbury, he's from Iowa. He's a longer kid. He's not truly 6'4". He's probably closer to 6'3". But he's a dynamic athlete that plays soccer. He has done really everything. He's a kicker, he's a punter, and he does field goals. He's kind of a do-it-all guy that has great flexibility and range to be able to hit balls in certain angles that most high school players can't get. So something that we always look at as far as the special teams and kickers just in general is trying to find not just a great kicker, but also a great athlete, because I do believe those players usually end up developing into the higher caliber of kicker or punter or whatever maybe you're asking them to do. So I think that covers the list. But yeah, really excited about this group. I'm excited about the guys that signed, in the December date that could have chose elsewhere to leave, but they stuck with us. And with those 23 that were originally committed to the last staff, and 15 of those players stuck with us. 7 of those players were early enrollees, and then one of those was with us, or an additional one was with us, and Isaiah Hung, who makes the 8th freshman early enrollee right now. And those guys are training with us and getting their body ready for spring ball and kind of the nuances of how we do things. So I'm excited about that group because there's a lot of talent in that group. And I think in certain position groups, they knocked it out of the park in their recruitment prior. So we're excited to add them, and as well as add the players that we know, for one personally, but also being able to witness these guys live in pads, run around and strike people and be extremely competitive.
Okay, next question. Greg Woods is the spokesman. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, Jimmy, signing 2 quarterbacks in this class, what was kind of the thinking there, and what do you like about those 2 guys?
Well, the thinking was that they're both really talented, and I do believe that if you can start early with a quarterback and develop them, there's always going to be a race in every single class. You're trying to find the best player that you can possibly take at the current moment, and we're still going to potentially look to add if we can, maybe later. But right now, I thought it was pretty pivotal to take an in-state talent like Dalton Anderson if we can get him, because I think he's really special. And then obviously Owen Eshelman, just his ability to who he is, and just seeing that, having worked with Mark Gronowski and knowing that maybe Mark Gronowski's best attribute is who he is as a person and as a leader and how he works. We felt like Owen was that early on. And so it's going to be a great matchup, and I'm sure there's going to be a friendship and a connection that's created amongst those two guys.
As a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll call on you. Next up, Sam Taylor from Lewiston. Go ahead, Sam.
Jimmy, when you look at the recruits that you were able to retain from the previous staff, what was that process like for just introducing yourself and gaining their trust?
Yeah, well, the day that I met with my current team, I also met with the entire team here, and then I met with the freshmen separately. And I would say meeting with an entire team of, close to 100 people on a Zoom with a bunch of new staff members that really don't know me, that I'm looking at myself just like this. Talk to a bunch of people that, for one, don't know me and I don't know them. I think it's somewhat unique, especially in your first interaction, because I'm a pretty normal person. And none of this is really a facade for me. So I thought that was somewhat unique in just talking to the team. But the ability to talk and connect with that freshman group is really important because there was way less people and it was more interactive. And the parents were involved in that, and they were able to chime in and ask questions and try to get to know me, but also understand like maybe what my plan was moving forward with the team. And right away, it was one of the first things I did was look at that signing class and just make sure that what type of player they were and what did their skill set look like. So I was well aware of who they were prior to those conversations being had with them, and then just trying to connect with them. Obviously, them being up here, not shortly after when I arrived here, and meeting the early enrollees face to face has been great, and then building a relationship with them has been it's been awesome. They don't know any different. I went through that transition myself as a player. The people that recruited me positionally weren't the same people that I showed up for in college day one, and I would say it was a blessing in my life of the people that were in my life when I showed up. So they've been open. They've been great, and I'm really excited for their future.
Next question, Jamie Vinnick. Go ahead, Jamie.
I promise this one will have I think, be a shorter answer than the first one. But you kind of look at this class and the 18 guys you just signed. Is there one maybe characteristic of the guys that kind of stands out to you, whether it be speed or so on?
Yeah, I would say they're all tough because we all watch them live strike each other with pads on. And we're not going to take players that aren't physical.
Okay, next question, Sam Taylor. Go ahead, Sam.
What was your I guess what's your that might tie into being tough, it's essentially, but when you look at your offensive line group, what are kind of the characteristics that you look for in kind of the style of play that you're looking for, especially from your O-line group?
Yeah, looking for a long, twitchy kid that can develop into his body. And I would say those that uh, great flexibility, great be able to redirect, but we do look at maybe the longer type of player that's going to take a year or so to develop into his body, maybe more so than the 6'3" kid that's already polished as a sophomore, and has all the rankings. Like I really don't get into how many stars a player has or how many rankings or what the kid's ranked at the current moment. That's our job to develop players. It's our job to teach them what they need to know. It's our job to get them to be better at maybe what they are currently lacking or deficient at, and mold them to where you see them what they can become. That's really the idea of becoming a coach, right? You got to teach these things and you got to mentor them. And for one, I just know all three of those guys that we added are all physical and they're all tough and they all want to be really special players. And so you can find the right players. You can find them. Not that they all have to be 6'5", but you do look for a longer player that can naturally gain weight and gain it the right way.
Next question, Andrew Clinton. Andrew, go ahead.
Hey Jimmy, I was just wondering what your thoughts were with the new roster limitations for college football and how much more flexibility that gave you when you were out there on the recruiting trail with this group, and how you plan on taking into account walk-ons and everything with that new limit.
Well, everybody's going to get an opportunity this spring, obviously to compete, and I'm still trying to get to know this team from the skill set and who they are as football players and who they are as individuals. But do I love it? No, I don't love it. I think I just believe in developing the high school players. I think it gets harder and harder to develop, the true high school player that's raw, that has talent inside of him, but maybe isn't as polished just because he doesn't do camps as much, or he's a 3-sport athlete, and you're trying to project, but at times when you're projecting off of raw athleticism, and that takes some time to develop. But if you can't be at 120, it gets harder for the high school player to have success. That, as well as the player safety part of things, is I don't know if all of those rules are written into place yet, as far as if you can replace inside the 105 due to injury or not. But yeah, it's going to become more and more unique, and I don't know how many places are thrilled about the roster cut, just for the sake of having to make some hard decisions on your team.
Next question, Greg Woods. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, you mentioned you were still looking to add players. Was that just at the quarterback spot, or like what positions were you kind of looking at that for?
I mean, I think it's going to take spring ball to see what is currently on the roster to where we're deficient at, or there could be attrition of players naturally wanting to go play somewhere else, or where they get stacked in the depth chart. There is always going to be, nowadays in college football, it's always ever changing, and you got to be flexible, and you got to be able to adapt. And so yeah, the recruitment process of watching high school players as sophomores and as juniors, and then looking at the transfer portal, it really never ends. The more they add into the transfer portal, the more you have to watch, because you have to be aware of what is in there in case something happens on your current roster. So I'm not really looking to replace or dive into any of those things right now. We just got to see our guys compete. We also got to see who still wants to be a Coug here after spring.
Next question, Sam Taylor. Go ahead, Sam.
What role did the new staff members, particularly Mike Body, play in the recruitment, for instance? And did they add anything, or maybe swing anybody's, or I guess just kind of build a relationship with any of the new guys?
What was your question? What role did Mike have in the recruitment of these guys currently here?
Yeah, or any of the other new staff members that you didn't have at South Dakota State.
Mike had a role. I mean, Mike was connecting with these players just as much as Coach Lucas was connecting with the players. I think initially, with not knowing who is going to be, named the assistant O-line coach, I think our current players maybe thought like we're going to have 2 O-line coaches. I just believe so much in the line positions on both sides of the ball, just the development piece and the ability to have more eyes on that position that can aid in technical and schematical advantages to give you the resource to your players to have success. So Mike's been an unbelievable asset here for us. Just his experience, he's got a wealth of knowledge, and he's done it at the highest of levels. Probably a Hall of Famer here soon. So yeah, anytime you can add somebody like that, I think it's pivotal. But as far as the staff that was here that we kept on, they have been awesome. Taylor Long was in on-campus recruiting coordinator, and she has been phenomenal. Just working tirelessly as far as having players on campus, knowing exactly what has been done and where to take them, and just the smallest of things. The people that are here have been awesome. Owen Babler, who was working in the recruiting department, has been a huge asset for me. He's from the state of Washington on the west side, and I've relied a lot on him, and just asking him questions about certain players. It's a little bit like almost like a computer. He knows everything about every kid pretty much in the state, and being able to be a lead asset for this staff that's here as far as what has been done in the past and where to find film on these kids and height and weight and measurements. He's been phenomenal.
We have time for a few more questions. Brock Craven, go ahead, Brock.
Hey, this is Noah Schmick with KHQ SWX. I'm on Brock's account. But Coach, I thought I'd ask kind of a general question. I know you were at South Dakota State for 2 years as the head coach, but then trying to get a signing class done in this little amount of time with WSU. I guess I'm just wondering, can you tell us kind of what the challenges are and what had to go into it to get some of these guys on board with you?
Well, I don't know if it was much of a challenge as what people think. Like when we recruited these players, a large portion of them were committed to us already. They were committed to not just the university. They were committed to the people that recruited them, that developed relationships with them, that sat in their home, that talked to their parents, that got to know them for 6 months, and were with them every step of the way, watching and calling them after their high school games. And that's what this is. This is college athletics, and it is, I don't know how other places do it, but I believe in relationships and developing players. But in order to develop them, you have to be open to them, and they got to get to know you and who you are, to the core of who you are. And our staff does a really good job of connecting with players individually. And so, you know, we didn't take the entire class. We just, those that had the desire and seeked out and wanted to come here, and we felt like had the ability to do it at this level. You know, I'm not going to turn down players that we saw live, that there's a relationship that we feel like they could do it at quote unquote the highest of levels. I think that we produced enough players in my time at South Dakota State and the recruiting of how we did it, that we were putting, you know, in 22, we put 8 players had NFL opportunities. They have an NFL opportunity from an FCS school. If they have an NFL opportunity in general from wherever they're at, they're good enough to play anywhere in the country. And those are the players that we feel like we were recruiting and that we were on. And they've gotten the opportunity to follow us here. But how hard was it? Yeah, it's unique for sure. It's unique. Just the timeline of things is unique. Setting up and planning official visits and speaking to their family about the resources that are here as you're still learning them. To speak on the town of Pullman when you're still learning about it. Yeah, there's challenges with that, but I think a large majority of this came down to them, their parents trusting us in us as individuals, and how we already invested in them for months in the recruiting process, that they felt good with us is leaving their son with us to develop. So there's more dynamics to college football than just what a kid runs his 40 in, and we try to get to know the kids and their competitive spirit to come out and want to compete, not just on Saturdays, but day in and day out, to be the best version of themselves as possible.
All right, next question, Jack Wallace. Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you, and thanks, Coach. Just wanted to ask you, I know we talked about this, and when I last spoke with you about the integration of getting SDSU players and these new guys coming in and Coug players here, but to touch more on the new guys coming in and on freshmen here, I mean, you're sort of having a 3-pronged attack to get all these guys in. I mean, what's the best way that you're handling that and getting them now as these guys start to get on campus and you start to get the real spring prep in?
Well, I'd say if you're talking about the early enrollee freshmen that are here that joined us from the last signing class, I mean, they don't know any different. They don't. They got recruited by a staff, and I don't know what that recruiting process was like for them or how much communication was with them on a weekly. I'm not going to speak on that at all. But how we do things here and how we try to develop, you know, the mental side of things, the personal side of things, I feel really good about how they're going to develop here, just who they are and how competitive they seem to be at the current moment of where we're at right now and in the spring season. But yeah, there's some uniqueness to all of this because somewhat there's players that we brought with us. There's the current, you know, the team that was here from the prior staff. And then there's not only the recruits that were a part of the prior staff, but the ones that we were recruiting. And usually you just deal with the new recruitment and then your current team. And so there's like 4 stages to this, and I'm well aware of that. But at the same time, this is a sport. It's a team. No different than year in and year out, jumping from a little league baseball team to a different baseball team. The sport itself and how much practice and interaction that you have on a daily basis is what naturally always makes a team feel like a family. And then there's also the support of the staff and how we do things here and developing relationships that make the players feel comfortable and who they are as individuals prior to football. So there is we're still doing that. It's not like all of a sudden, we're a finished product. We're just starting this. We're 1 month in and feel good about many positions right now of the talent that's there and what could come of it. And then obviously there's room for improvement at in every area, and we got to assess that come this spring.
Jamie Vinnick, go ahead.
Coach, just 2 quick things. I was looking online. It says that this signing period goes from Wednesday to Friday. Has that changed from when it used to be open from February until the middle of April?
They give you the 2-day grace part. And I don't know why the rules are. We've, in my time, haven't had players sign and then unsign in a day. Just we typically recruit players for close to a year, prior to them signing. So there's a relationship and there's substance there that they're not just jumping out of the boat at the next shiny school that offers them a scholarship. And that's a part of this too, is trying to get to know everybody individually to figure out what makes them tick and trying to find the right fit, not just find the kid that has the most stars or the most talked about recruit. Like, that doesn't win you football games. Being a part of a team and having substance behind what you believe in and understanding how they're going to get developed and wanting to be at the location for one and where they're going to go play, it matters. But yeah, I don't know the exact when that changed, but I know there's that 2-day window. There's always that 2-day window in February.
Excuse me. And then what's kind of the schedule plan for spring ball, and how do you kind of structure that around the transfer portal opening in April, and kind of how you want to approach the spring and getting into the summer?
Yeah, we're going to release the schedule here in the next couple weeks. So I'll just let that come out when it comes out.
All right, last question, Sam Taylor. Go ahead, Sam.
What was the timeline kind of for this whole class? Were you kind of talking to anybody yesterday, or have all these guys pretty much been the last few weeks kind of securely committed?
Well, obviously, when we made this transition, and a lot of these players were committed to us already, them trying to get a release, obviously, and then seeking us out to see if we would take them. They were coming for the staff. We were the ones that recruited them and developed the relationships with them, and we knew about them, and we felt good in their ability to come in and compete. And so that I said it numerous times probably now, these have been relationships for 6 to 7 months. As far as Josiah Cornwell, we've have recruited Dylan, Jordan Cunningham we've known about. We just kind of had filled up at our prior location. Same thing with Trevor. We knew about, we had talked with multiple times, got to know him a little bit last spring, and then being able to get back in on these guys, I think, is rare. And I was excited about that. There's a couple guys in the, that are already here that were somewhat quick in the recruitment process, like Devin Ellison. That was getting in on him. That was about 2 weeks of recruiting and trying to figure out what was important to him, and then getting him on a visit and getting to know us, him and his mother. Those were maybe a little bit quicker than a large majority of this class.